Happy Wednesday, everybody. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on a hump day. Glad to have you with us. If you've missed any part of the show lately, if you missed any of the collected sound from practice availabilities, you could go to ESPN700sports.com. You can download the ESPN 700 app. You can find it all in the on-demand section. Ryan Leaf is going to join us in about half an hour on the show. Sammy Mora may or may not be joining us because of post-practice media availability today in our noon hour. Morgan Scalley, Utah head football coach, at 1 o'clock. We'll get as much as we can out of Morgan. Usually that's about 15 minutes, and we look forward to that conversation as Utah football camp continues. You're now just over 2 weeks away from the beginning of the Utah football season. When they kick off against Idaho, we start to see some of the questions that we've talked about all offseason long get answered. We start to get an assessment of whether or not you really have the talent that you think you have. You start to get some kind of an idea about whether or not the changes at the coordinator positions are going to translate into actual, truly different looks, or there's going to be more same, less different. One of the other things that I think we have a good idea of, or we believe that we have a good idea of, is what the team chemistry looks like right now, the overall atmosphere of things at the University of Utah. A lot of optimism, a lot of for lack of a better term, a lot of enjoyment being shown by players, even as you heard the head coach state that, we're now kind of in the dog days. This week of camp is a slog, man. It's a tough, tough time when you're heading into week 3 and the bumps and the bruises are there. There's a couple of guys in the room that, your position room that are not practicing or they're limited in practice. You got certain people wearing the non-contact jerseys now. Your shin splints are firing up. It's a tough time to remain positive, optimistic, enthusiastic about football, but every bit of sound we are hearing is still kind of like letting some of that come through. Yeah, there's an acknowledgement of the difficulty, but it's not a complaint. So the culture and the chemistry of this team is something that has to change under a new head coach. You want to keep the good stuff there. You want to keep the positives intact, but it does have to change. It's just the nature of things in sports and in college football. Anytime there's a leadership change, there's going to be some cultural shift. It's one thing that we have really kind of taken for granted at the University of Utah for many years, that culturally you understand what the team is supposed to be. Now, there's always been outliers, and there's been guys that color outside the lines, and there's been, bad actors, there's been tough examples, things like that. But for the most part, you've had this continuity of sort of team dynamic and this continuity of team culture and of the outward-facing version of that, what it looks like for the fan, what it looks like for the media, what it looks like for the observer, what it looks like even for the opposing team. I don't know that we really give enough credit to that, or I don't know that we really talk enough about it or pay enough attention to it or value enough how that constancy, that consistency, that embedded, ingrained culture has helped out really the entire atmosphere around Utah football and obviously within Utah football as well. And the reason it's front of mind for me today is because it's kind of a headline that's going a little bit under the radar, but TCU has dismissed one of their projected starters from the team. TCU is not on a lot of people's radar as the eventual Big 12 champion they're not on a lot of people's radar, even as maybe a contender for that. TCU, I think, is going to have something to say about it. I think TCU is one of the toughest matchups that Utah is going to face this year, as we have talked about the schedule a lot. TCU right now is trying to figure out who one of their starting safeties is going to be after a physical altercation in the locker room, after a fight in the locker room. And I'm sure we'll get more details on this as the story continues to develop. But Jacob Fields, who was a guy who transferred in, he was one of the gems of their transfer class. He was the co-defensive player of the year last year in Conference USA football. He was at Louisiana Tech, and he started all 12 games for Louisiana Tech. For the first time in the history of Louisiana Tech football, for the first time in a decade at Louisiana Tech, a defensive back led the team in tackles. He had 92 tackles from the safety position. He had 3 interceptions. He returned 2 of those for touchdowns. He had a couple tackles for loss. He broke up 5 passes. He was a huge difference maker for Louisiana Tech. And like a lot of people that are in that group of 6 level, that are in that mid-major level, when you have a standout season like that, of course, he was like, all right, I'm going to try to take advantage of these postseason accolades. I'm going to put my name into the transfer portal. I'm going to see what the market for my services is. And what does he do? He climbs the ladder. He ends up at a respectable Big 12 program, and it just so happens to be TCU. Jacob Fields was the spring ball and fall camp starter until yesterday, when he was kicked off the team, when he was dismissed from the team because there was a fight and he was involved in it. Multiple sources reporting, and when you say multiple sources, what you're talking about is people who heard from the players on the team why this happened. And what a strange development this is. And it's something that is a dynamic that exists around the transfer portal more than anything else. A guy comes in. He's the best player on his previous team. He comes in at TCU, and he's among the really good players at TCU. He's probably no longer the best player at TCU. He's probably almost certainly no longer the big dog in the room, right? I'm talking about the weight room, the practice field, the locker room. It's a really, really tough thing to walk into one of these Power 4 programs, Big 12 program, anyone who's kind of in a respectable position, and TCU certainly is, going to be really hard for a guy moving up the ladder to walk in there and be the big dog immediately, to be the number 1 player immediately. I mean, look at the way that this exists at the University of Utah, right? Like even Devin Dampier, who came up a level and transferred in at the quarterback position, and safeties are the quarterbacks of the defense, so there's some things that translate there. But the quarterback position is the de facto leader of a football team. That quarterback position is the sort of almost automatic reference point for leadership in a locker room. And Devin Dampier was excellent at New Mexico. And he was here with his previous coach, right? So it's not like he has to establish himself independently even. He's being brought in with a guy who is already like, that's my dude, so give him the respect he deserves. And he had no trouble earning that spot at the University of Utah. But climbing the ladder from New Mexico, Devin Dampier did not show up and immediately take the place as I am the best player on this Utah football team. It's just really impossible to do when you're coming from a Mountain West or a Conference USA or a Sun Belt or something like that. And it's certainly also the case, maybe even more so the case when we're talking about like the Big Sky or the guys who come out of, for like a SWAC or a 1AA conference. Devin Dampier came from New Mexico and immediately became the most important player on Utah's football team. But the alpha dog, the biggest dog in that room, was not Devin Dampier. He was never all last season, right? The ultimate, hey, that's the guy first off the bus. That's the guy who we put front foot forward. That was Spencer Fano. someone who is already in the program, right? So this Jacob Fields guy shows up at TCU, and he's out there excelling. He's out there earning a starting spot, a projected starting spot. And for some reason, for whatever reason, Jacob Fields apparently could not get on the same page as his locker room. Apparently could not get on the same level as some of his teammates when it came to communication, to leadership, things like that. The official statement from TCU is, due to a violation of team rules, Jacob Fields has been removed from our roster, will not be a member of our football team moving forward. It was a fight in the locker room. And multiple sources are reporting, which means the he said, she said from players, is that he was starting to feel picked on by other players on the team at practices, and his reaction to that ended up becoming violence. And this fight led to his dismissal from the team. Again, limited details on this, but you know how serious a fight has to be to get you dismissed from a team when you're a projected starter? I'm trying to think back to Okay, so at the University of Utah, right before I left the University of Utah football team, there was a fight in the locker room between a highly thought of, highly regarded recruit and a guy who was like exactly in my category as a player on that team. He was a walk-on who had been a really good local football player, high school football player, who didn't get recruited, didn't really make any splashes in that regard, ended up walking on at the University of Utah, and was just, by every measure, a rank and file type player, right? You show up at practice, the coaches kind of don't care what you're doing. You just keep your head down and you slog away, you plug away, right? Freshman kid comes in, thinks his you-know-what doesn't stink, thinks that he can say what he wants to say to the older but still not super established walk-on type player in the locker room. Things get a little bit spicy. Freshman kid thinks he's cooler than he actually is, doesn't realize that said player, said walk-on, said nobody, happened to be a pretty good high school wrestler as well, and they got in a fight in the locker room. And the highly rated recruit, I will tell you, did not even come close to winning that fight. Even in that case, where it's a highly rated recruit, a decently regarded recruit, and a walk-on who, by definition, the coaches don't even really want you there. You're a walk-on, right? They didn't choose to give you something. Even in that case, he doesn't get kicked off the team. There's some disciplinary action. There's a wag of the finger from the coaches. There's a, hey, what the heck is happening between you guys? You're going to have to walk around holding hands for the rest of practice, whatever it is. Even in that case, and that was a pretty decent fight. Nobody got kicked off the team for it, and that was a locker room fight. That's a fight that happens on the field. No one is ever getting kicked off a team. Coaches don't even care about those things, really, as long as nobody gets injured from it. This Jacob Fields fight led to a dismissal from the team. As reported by the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and many other sources, it was a brewing problem that developed into an actual physical altercation that now changes the dynamic for TCU's football season, because this was an incredibly talented player, a projected starter, a previous Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year. He was co-Defensive Player of the Year, but still, that's the level of contributor that this kid is capable of being, and he is no longer on the team. That is something that we should be overwhelmingly relieved is not a story you get out of Utah football very often. You don't get this out of BYU football very often. You don't get this out of really any functional football team all that often. And again, there are always guys that, even if the culture is great, they don't really integrate themselves. They don't fit all the way in. There's always going to be friction, tension. You get 100+ personalities in a room. Not everybody gets along. Not everybody's going to be friendly. Yes, you're going to get some bleep talking. Yes, you're going to get some physical altercation, some fighting. But this one, we're going to get more details eventually, had to have been really, really bad in order for a player to get kicked off the team. And how bad would it have to be? Well, it would have to be somebody got hurt from it, like another player genuinely got hurt from it, or it was kind of like an ambush attack, sucker punch type situation, in which case a coach might feel compelled to say, hey, you didn't let this guy even defend himself. You're off the team now. I mean, a weapon being used potentially. The regulation within a locker room, the self-regulation of a team within a locker room, on the practice field, in the weight room, becomes so massively important this time of year during winter conditioning when, the light at the end of the tunnel feels dim. Yes, you've got a game in a couple of weeks, but right now you've been practicing against each other for a couple of weeks now, right? And that guy who kept jawing at you, you're sick of hearing his voice. You don't like the way this thing is going. The bumps and the bruises are accumulating. The coach that you never liked is on your nerves. The player that you never liked is on your nerves. The water's in the little water bottles that the managers keep bringing you is too dang cold. Stop putting ice in it. It gives me a headache. Whatever it is, right? They're just things that accumulate to this point to where you're irritable. You don't want to be out of practice. You have to be out of practice, right? And Utah football, even under a new regime, and maybe even especially under the new regime because of the atmospheric changes at practice, is not going to have this type of issue where even when physicality, disagreements, spicy stuff, when that boils over, it's not going to be to the point where your season is affected by it. This is a massive cultural red flag for TCU, and it might be something that causes Sonny Dykes to reevaluate his portal transfer recruitment process, transfer portal recruitment process, the evaluation of personalities, not just talent, but personalities and how they're going to fit. And honestly, like, I'm looking at obviously this guy who got dismissed. They obviously looked at him and said, okay, we can't have you anymore. I'm also looking at the rest of my team, the guys who are still in the locker room, and I'm going, how the heck did you let it get this bad? I'm looking at my assistant coaches, particularly the coach in the safety room, saying, how did you let it get this bad that I had to kick a guy off the team? I mean, if this was Texas Tech, or this was BYU, or this was Utah, these are the top 3 teams in the Big 12, kind of by consensus. If this were Texas Tech, this would be a huge national story right now. And people would be saying, man, Joey McGuire has lost the plot. They didn't get the Sorsby thing figured out right. They identified the wrong guy. They wasted a bunch of time, money, energy, effort on that. And now look at this top safety they had transfer in. He was the wrong guy too. What's going on with the talent evaluation, the personality evaluation at Texas Tech? If this was at BYU, obviously it'd be a massive story for similar reasons. Oh, can you believe it? This was supposed to be the team that had it all figured out. And look at this. This kid who they brought in to play alongside Faletau Satawala is now off the team, right? If this was happening at the University of Utah, I would be hitting a panic button saying, hold on a minute. I never thought on Morgan Scalley's watch you'd get something like this. Because you know what? It won't happen. I'll tell you why. Unless someone is just an actual, like, schizophrenic. Colton Swan, Sharif Shaw, and OK Brechterfield, Luther Ellis, right? These guys are not just coaches. They have the leadership, mentorship gene where they're going to come in and they're going to say, whoa, whoa, whoa. I heard what you said at practice. I saw the tension developing. I saw a couple of helmet slaps. I saw a couple extra face mask grabs, and you guys jawing back and forth. Let's nip this in the bud so it doesn't affect your season. It doesn't affect your season. It doesn't affect my season. It doesn't affect our season. This is insane. A player of this caliber being dismissed from a team, I want more details. But as I look at it through the Utah lens, because that's how I view all stories right now in college football, I'm looking at it with an immense sense of relief and confidence that you don't have to stress over this type of thing with Utah football. You don't have to worry about something getting that far out of hand. And look, there have been guys even recently in the program where it was not easy. It doesn't have to be easy for the chemistry to work out properly. I mean, Tavion Thomas is the best example recently we have of this with Utah football, right? I have a lot of sympathy for Tavion Thomas because he went through an awful lot in his personal life with personal loss and tragedy and things like that, while he was also making the life transition of moving to a place in Utah they didn't have a lot of deep intuitive connection to. They got, for a season, they got greatness out of him. They got great production out of him. And then even Quinton Ganther, who's just an absolute stud of a coach, was not able to get on the same page as that player, right? Was not able to really figure out how to get through, how to stop the, hey, I need more, I want more, hey, I'm not going to do this, hey, I'm going to show up in shape. Like, for whatever reason, it just, that was something that you couldn't maintain your grasp on. And it was unfortunate, and it is unfortunate still, that you never got another run at, Tavion Thomas really trying to be a great back, because for that 1 year, he was a great back. But look at what Utah football was and still is. The rest of the team, as much as it can be, gets insulated from something like that, to where even when this great player or potentially great player has kind of removed himself with his own behaviors and with a lack of compliance, remove themselves from your game plan, the rest of the team doesn't have to face the headline fallout and things like that. That's the most recent example you've got with Utah football. And it was not the reason, right, that your offense struggled. It was not the reason why anything changed drastically, because you had the depth you needed, and also because there were bigger fish to fry with injury situations that never really got resolved, et cetera, et cetera. So pretty crazy situation right now. As you look around college football, you look around football camps, and you see, all right, by this Saturday, and a lot of guys will be running their kind of final scrimmages, these coaches want to have a pecking order. They want to know who their starters are. Now TCU, who I would put in the second tier of teams in the Big 12 Conference, is going to have to figure out who their one of their starting safeties is. Say a little thank you to the football gods, if you're a Ute fan out there, that you've got the right guys on the team, you got the right guys leading the team, so that headlines like this are going to be not completely absent, but fewer and further between. And I should be fair to Sonny Dykes and say his program is usually not the program that you report on this type of stuff, right? There are other schools that this becomes a little bit more of a predictable outcome. I will say that that's not a Sonny Dykes thing. That's not a Texas Tech thing. My guy Zach has once again been listening to me filibuster for 25 minutes or so. He's here behind the glass filling in for James. Hey.
Hello. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm a little tired, but, honestly, like, after hearing you rant about this, at the end of the day, your play determines on how you play. I don't think fighting is the answer. I honestly, just let your play do the talking at this point. Yeah, there's going to be some jawing. There's, we see this with, NFL training camps and, joint practices with other teams. Like yesterday, is Saints, and I think the Cowboys. I might be wrong, but they just had a fight break out.
They had like 7 fights break out.
Yeah,
and I talked about last week how Spencer Fano fighting Jared Verse was actually good for the Browns because, first of all, they didn't miss any reps. Those guys didn't have to take time off practice. They didn't have to interrupt practice. Like it's a normal thing when it's on the field altercations. I go back to my own terrible career in football. My guy Scott Yost, shout out to you, baller. He was our best physical specimen of a player. 6'5", 270, 280 in high school, really athletic offensive tackle, right? He and I would get into it at practice. I'd be playing linebacker, he'd be playing tackle. We get into it at practice. We do one-on-one pass rush drills, right? I'd line up on the edge, try to get around him. He'd hold. I'd yell at him for holding. I'd shove him, things like that, right? He's still to this day, one of my best friends in the world, right?
Right.
Back then, we were even closer, best friends. Like, we rode to school together every single day. We had another guy on the team come up to us and just be like, hey, are you guys okay? I really don't want, like, you're both team captains. I don't want this to affect. And we kind of laughed it off like, no, man, that's just competitiveness coming out. When it's on the field, and I'm not telling people things they don't know. When it's on the field, it's fine. Maybe a little too much in that Cowboys Saints practice. When it's an altercation between teammates, I actually want Lance Holtzclaw and Zaraway Williams to be talking back and forth to each other. I actually want, like Devin Dampier told us last year, that Lander Barton was constantly jawing at him. That he and Lander Barton had like a really interesting dynamic where during practice they were always competing with each other and they were talking you-know-what to each other at practice. And that is, in my opinion, that is a successful dynamic. You want guys to not just be competitive with one another, to be like fiery to the point of boiling over, competitive with one another. However, you have to be able to compartmentalize. You have to have the maturity, the team culture, and the team chemistry. And if failing that, you have to have the coaching intervention to where it does not boil over into the lunchroom. It doesn't boil over into the locker room. It doesn't boil over into the film room. It doesn't become something that forces you as a coach to disqualify someone even from a game, much less from a whole season. And now if you're Jacob Fields, whatever you did, right, however bad that this thing got, you now don't have recourse to go play somewhere else. There is no transfer portal window that you can capitalize on. You've been dismissed from the team at TCU. You better get your butt in class, man.
Yep.
Make sure that you get your good grades and you get those credits to transfer. That's really crazy. All right. That's enough me ranting about team cultures and stuff like that. I'm very excited. Ryan Leaf is going to join us next. You'll hear Ryan Leaf and see Ryan Leaf on USA Network with the new reconstructed, reimagined Pac-12 conference, where, of course, the Aggies will play. Ryan Leaf to talk all things college football next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in the college football legend, my good buddy Ryan Leaf. So nice to reconnect with Ryan Leaf, who will be the lead Pac-12 analyst on the USA Sports this year as there's a new era of Pac-12 football. Ryan, sir, how are you? Welcome to the show again.
Thank you, my friend. It's been a while. How are you doing?
Doing great, man. 3 kids, oldest back in school as of yesterday, and just plugging along. How are you and the family?
Babe, Sean has 3 kids now. He's got us beat now. He's got 3 kids. I think last time we saw you, when you came up to the spot in Park City, you only had the 1.
Yeah, I think we did only have 1. Now I've got 3 little girls, 7,
Wow.
7, 4, and 2.
7, 4, and 2.
Yeah.
MacGyver's 8. Bo is 2. Yeah, so we're a little bit behind you. I don't know if that's gonna change. I'm an old man. So.
Well, I'm not exactly young either, but it's good. By the way, being an old dad is awesome because you get all the selfish stuff out of the way when you're young, and then you get to just be pour into your kids when you're our age.
I agree totally. I turned 50 this year. I'll be 65 when she graduates high school. I just feel like there's a youthfulness and an innocence that's keeping me that way too, watching it through their eyes, which I love. So like I have no instinct at all to live vicariously through them. Like, so my son's playing sports now. I'm just like, I just love watching him compete and enjoy the ride home afterwards. And that's the fun part. I have no competition of me involved in anything when it comes to any of that stuff.
Now, your lovely wife, also an athlete, so I imagine the children are at least genetically going to be predisposed to some excellence there. But do you already recognize in an 8-year-old some of your own competitiveness, some of your own sort of mentality in your son?
Yeah, he came down from the playroom the other night upset, and we didn't know what was wrong. And I was like trying to get him to communicate his feelings and everything like that. And I sat him on my lap, and because I thought it's maybe, the fact that we made him come down and eat dinner, that can always be a real trigger for these 8-year-olds, having to stop doing what they're doing. But he's been trying this new soccer move, this kick, rainbow kick. And he was just so frustrated that he wasn't able to do it. So he was like almost crying. And I sat with him. I was like, well, hey, I know nothing about soccer, so I can't really teach you. So I said, we can look up like YouTube tutorials. And he was like, it just changed immediately. He watched them. And then last night he called me up to the playroom and he had it down. He's kicking the ball over the top of his head and running it down. Yeah, he's only thing about soccer for him, he's probably going to be like 6'9", so I don't know if that's going to be a soccer player that everybody's looking at out there, but maybe a goalie.
He's only 8. He'll figure it out between now and whenever he's got to figure it out. All right, so back in Pac-12 country, now the Pac-12 reconstituted version of the conference. Your alma mater, Washington State, still there. Oregon State still there. Utah State up in Logan, still going to be they're going to be a new part of the Pac-12. Give me a sense of your level of intrigue, optimism over what this reconstituted Pac-12 conference is going to be on the national landscape.
Well, I think it immediately becomes the 5th best conference in all of college football. You could maybe argue because of the lack of its size, it could be as competitive as the ACC in some settings. So, this was a vision that Teresa Gould had when the realignment happened and everybody vacated the Pac-12 and left Washington State and Oregon State behind. I don't think there was ever a moment where either one of those teams, after they had met with Teresa Gould, that they were going to go anywhere else. They were going to rebuild the brand of what the Pac-12 was. And this is the vision that has become a reality now that became alive July 1st, and will have their first games kick off on September 5th. This is a conference that has some bold ideas about what they want to be in a college football landscape that is incredibly confusing out there, regionality-wise. Texas State is the lone school that's outside the Mountain and Pacific time zone. So, I think this will be a much different look than a lot of those other conferences that, in terms of travel and regionality and things like that. So I'm excited. It was a really neat offer to head the group for USA Sports in their inaugural year of their 5-year contract to broadcast the league. And we open up September 5th with Wyoming at Colorado State for Jim Mora and his introduction to the Pac-12 conference.
A lot of conversation in college football, especially this time of year, and I can't wait for it to go away. We can do X's and O's, but there's these resource conversations, and can you compete? Do you have the money to compete? Are you just going to develop, if you're a Pac-12 team now, if you're a Conference USA team, you're just going to develop the next SEC players and Big Ten players, and are your coaches going to be able to retain anything? I'm intrigued by this Pac-12 because I know plenty of people up in Logan at Utah State. I know guys on that coaching staff. I have a decent sense of what their resources look like, what their NIL looks like. I don't know what it looks like for Washington State and Oregon State right now because of where they come from and how much holdover there is, right? I don't know what it's like for Boise State. Is there a significant disparity right now between the top of this new conference and the bottom of this new conference when it comes to available resources relative to their competitors?
I don't think so, but we won't know a lot of this until we start playing the games. And to your point and how you started it, all this is speculative. A lot of times you could spend a lot of money and resources towards getting these players, and do you have the right coach that can essentially put together a team of mercenaries year in, year out? Because that's what it's ultimately going to be. I mean, you look at some of these rosters around the country, and there's an instance where there's 70 new players on a roster. So you can't go into what you thought last year. You can't really go into what the rankings are preseason thinking that this team should be good, so let's rank them high. The fact that they do that and continue to do that is it kind of falls in line with the resources and support angle of things in terms of what you think it's going to be. And so I do feel like all the programs, the 6 in particular that are coming to the Pac-12, there's been a real upstart in support because of the brand of the conference. That we went around about 2 weeks ago and saw 4 of the universities, 3 of which are entering the new Pac-12, and you could hear and see the influence with the athletic directors, the presidents of the university on campus, the things and the support that has been given because of the brand of the Pac-12 and how that has influenced it.
Last year, in the expanded college football playoff, you had 2 non-Power 4 teams crack that field of 12. And that was not according to the plans of the powers that be, so the automatic qualifier status got changed up a little bit, but I'm still looking at like a Boise State. I'm still looking at Washington State, and I'm thinking, man, can one of these new Pac-12 teams be a college football playoff team? You've had an opportunity to, be closer to this and to talk to some of the people I haven't been able to talk to. Is that the vision for the eventual conference champion? Like, not only are we going to be the new Pac-12 champs, but in that conversation for a college football playoff?
Yeah, that was the hope from the start. So, I've had to have a lot of hard discussions with Washington State fans and supporters over the last couple of years. In the development of this new Pac-12 conference, I have to make it very clear to them that Washington State has a better chance to play in the college football playoff than they ever had in the old Pac-12. They haven't won a championship since 2003. As much as they revered Mike Leach and everything he was able to do at Washington State, they never won anything. They didn't win a division. They didn't play for a Pac-12 championship. None of it. So this gives Washington State and some of the teams I think at the very top, Boise State, who was just there 2 years ago, Oregon State, and you don't quite know what the other teams are going to present at the table, but it gives them the best shot to play for a college football playoff than they ever had, I think, in their previous conferences. So they're excited for that. The biggest thing I have and I love about this conference so far is I have no idea who you would pick to come out on top. I think Boise State, you would think just because of expectations, prior history, the ability to keep a lot of their roster together, but you have no idea. And My only fear, kind of like the old Pac-12, like you and I used to talk about all the time, was how they could cannibalize one another. You know, if you have a team that wins the conference championship sitting at 9-3, you know, is that a team that's going to get into the college football playoff? Well, you know, they may still be highly ranked as the Pac-12 champion, and that's ultimately what it takes for the college football playoff guidelines. The fifth highest ranked conference champion gets into the college football playoff. And so I think that puts the Pac-12 and these 8 schools in a very good position to come knocking on the door of the college football playoff once the end of November comes.
Ryan Leaf is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking reconstituted Pac-12 conference, where, of course, the Utah State Aggies will be plying their trade this upcoming college football season. Bronco Mendenhall has been a really high-level coach for a very long time, spent a lot of time at BYU, had success at Virginia, stepped away from the sport for a while, came back with a Utah State opportunity, did some good things with that group last year. I look at teams like Utah State. I look at teams, a lot of these teams in the Pac-12 conference, and where other places, a lot of it is, hey, do you have the money to compete in the Big 12? Do you have the money to compete in the ACC? Do you have enough to get these 5-star recruits in the Big 10? I think coaching matters more in the Big 12, or excuse me, in the Pac-12 right now than it does in most of these other conferences, and the Aggies have a good one. What is your sense of what that team could be in this new conference?
I agree. I think coaching plays a huge role in this aspect of things. I think it plays a huge role at the tops of those other conferences too. Like, you know, when I talked about the gathering a team full of mercenaries and putting a team together every year, you know, I don't know if there's a better one out there than Lane Kiffin. You know, Mel Tucker was extremely good at that, you know, his early tenure there at Michigan State. So you find the right coach who can meld together, you know, players that weren't on the roster a year ago, holdovers, guys that are developing and possibly could be viewed as a player that's going to step up to a higher level the next year, but you need to utilize him the most this year. You know, those types of coaches are a big deal. And I think Bronco's definitely an individual that can get the most out of his guys. You know, this is a new era of college football. And so some of the guys that have been in it for a long time, you're going to find out pretty quick whether or not they can meld to what this new format of what college football looks like. So I think there's some really good coaches in this conference. You know, there's a lot of new coaches. I think Coach Moore brings a ton of respect because of what he was able to do at UConn. I mean, the guy has been spectacular no matter where he's gone immediately. You know, you look at his time at UConn and turning that program around right away. And then you look at his time in the NFL with the Atlanta Falcons. His first year with them, they go to the NFC Championship game. So he knows what it takes to get the best out of somebody and maybe a team that he hasn't coached before to get them to believe. Really like what Kirby Moore was bringing to the table so far at Washington State. But again, you know, until the games are played, you don't quite know. And Washington State has to play Washington in week 1 for the Apple Cup. So that will be very, very interesting to see how they start, how they deal with failure, how they deal with success, all those things when you have a new head coach in place with this new landscape of college football.
I hope you don't mind me expanding the scope of our conversation a little bit outside of the Pac-12, but you know, you've been around the game of football for a long time. You've experienced the highest highs and some of the lows associated with it. And, you know, there's an insight that comes from your level of experience, especially playing the quarterback position. We got a really interesting situation at the University of Utah right now where a guy who'd been in place for 21 years as the head coach is no longer there. And the heir apparent has always been Morgan Scalley, and now he takes the reins for real for the first time. But he does this with a new offensive coordinator. He does this with a quarterback who we have very high hopes for, but who had followed the previous offensive coordinator on his path up through college football. Relative to that, Ryan, when it's a relationship you have, especially a close one with your offensive coordinator, and then you have to experience a switch. What does that do for a quarterback or maybe to a quarterback?
Well, it can be very daunting, you know, you especially when you go to a university, you usually go for the coach. I mean, the reason I went to Washington State was because of Mike Price, right? I mean, I can't imagine year or two into that if he were to have left and the offense that I was learning and developing, you know, the best thing that happened to me was I was with him for 4 years. And by the time we got to that Rose Bowl season, you know, I could read what he wanted to do on every single play. We just knew it. So that's always a difficult transition. Okay, it doesn't mean it's insurmountable. You know, you have a good game plan. And another thing is if your offensive coordinator is willing to do things that really showcase and highlight you as a player. Sometimes offensive coordinators and head coaches in particular, they're so set in their ways that they don't get out of their own way. They say, my way works, do it my way, and that's how we were successful. When in this day and age, that's not how it works. I mean, you look at Sean McVay when he took over for the Rams, he looked at Jared Goff, and, you know, after that first year with Jeff Fisher, who just tried to impose everything that he did, Sean McVay came in and said, what do you do best, and how do we make us great because of what you do great? And so I hope that's the same situation you have in Salt Lake City there at Utah, that someone that comes in and is willing to, have a theory and have a plan and a scheme together offensively, but know how to get it done with the guy that's the one that's, you know, cashing your checks for you, essentially. And that's important facet to find out. And you'll find that out pretty quick. You know, you find that out pretty quick in early games on what that scheme and what that transition is going to look like.
There's a cliche that gets thrown around, and I'm guilty of throwing it around myself, that you should always, you know, experience a big leap forward in your second year as a starter, especially if it's freshman to sophomore year. And, you know, BYU had Bear Bachmeier last year come in as a freshman and look great. And now he's going into his second year as a starter, his second year in college football. As a guy who's played that position, what is that growth like from year one to year two?
I don't think you actually recognize it, that it's happening. You're just doing the work. And then you get into games and things seem to have slowed down a bit. That seemingly felt like what it was for me. Even so much so, I started my last couple games of my freshman year. And then my next year, it felt like things had started to slow down. And then when we played some really elite defenses and teams, you could see, you know, some of the patterns, you know, weren't as slowed down, and you had to improve on them and things like that. And then going into year 3 in that system, I mean, it was like everything had come to a stop, and I could kind of dictate everything that was going on. So I would anticipate that he will feel very comfortable with what's happening. You know, bottom line, it comes down to the competition level. You know, when you get into those most competitive situations, you know, when they're trying to limit you and what you do best, how you deal with that. You know, do you deal with that in a healthy, positive way, or, you know, that's what you hope. But you're right. There's a significant leap. You know, you should learn and you should get better each and every time you step on the football field. And sometimes that gets, you know, interrupted during the season because from what the off season brings, because it gets so long, injuries happen and things of that nature. But there should be a significant leap in terms of how he sees the field, how he interprets what defenses are trying to do to him, and then the communication level between him and his coaches on how they want to get things done, and when things go bad, how to fix them.
Ryan Leaf for another minute or two here on the Sean O'Connell Show. You made, I don't know if you would call it a side hustle or if it's your main passion, but you've made a successful path in doing a bunch of these speaking engagements and talking about, you know, some of your struggles and the cautionary tale of, you know, being accountable and all these great things. And I wonder what advice you might have for Puka Nacua, who obviously played his high school ball here. The whole Nacua family has connections in our home state in Utah. He's right now the best young, or one of the top 3 young wide receivers in the league. It seems like the only thing standing in the way of him and, you know, not only being the highest paid wide receiver ever, at least for a time, but also achieving true greatness at the NFL level is his own kind of like tomfoolery. What advice would you have for somebody like Puka Nacua right now who's got everything in front of him?
Well, I can relate to him so easily in terms of feeling like you're pretty much bulletproof. You know, I do feel like some of the steps he made this offseason, you know, seeking support, going to rehab, things like that, seemed like it was going in the right direction. So you'd like to think there's been an improvement in that aspect of things and how he's dealing with stuff. But it fascinates me when I see it play out in real time with some of these young players who are so successful and are having so much success. because I go, how could they be doing that? And then I think back to where I was in that place where I was just not listening to anybody. I was just doing whatever I wanted to do because I thought I was right and no one could tell me any differently. The biggest thing for Puka is like he hasn't gotten paid yet. He's still, being paid on his rookie contract where he was a draft pick further down than anybody expected that he would be this good, And so you don't want to interrupt that, and if he's willing to act out in this way and kind of do whatever he wants to before that becomes to fruition, that's a scary proposition to have. I did like the signs of this offseason, like I said. It looked like he was trying to make some improvements. Like I tell all players, I've spoken to 79 universities now ever since Alabama coach Nick Saban brought me in almost 10 years ago. There is nothing. I know you have all these resources at your fingertips now with social media and the Players Tribune, your ability to speak directly to your fans and the public without necessarily an interpreter with the media. There really isn't much benefit to you talking while you're a player, plain and simple. The only focus is you should be the head of a Fortune 500 company, which is you as a player at the NFL level. When it's all said and done, because these careers are so short, you can have the rest of your life to be as you want. It's not going to transfer into more, endorsement dollars. If you're good enough, if you're a good enough player, that's going to take care of itself. And so that's a hard thing to ask them because no one wants to certainly hear that from me, especially. It's still important that I give them that advice. Years down the line or after some troubles, they may be able to look back on it and go, oh, those are the words that hit me when I needed it the most, and that's the important piece on why I continue to do it.
As you have gone around to these campuses and had an opportunity to talk to coaches and players, how different are players now? How professional are they? I mean, these guys, some of them are making millions of dollars. Even the ones who aren't making millions might be setting themselves up with at least a little nest egg or a house payment or something like that. How much have you watched in these 10-ish years the student-athlete change as you've gone around to these multiple campuses?
I think I agree with you in terms of the professionalism of it. I was just at the Washington State, fall camp, and they are pretty much running it like a professional camp. The way the walkthroughs exist, the practice, the time off, the nutrition, the strength and conditioning. I mean, it's if you're going to be paid like professionals, I think these coaches are starting to understand that we're going to treat you like professionals in terms of how we prepare and go about business. And I feel like I've seen a change. But listen, plain and simple, no matter how much money some of these kids are going to be making, there's still an innocence to college football. And that's why I still love it. That's why I love showing up on campuses to speak to these young men. I love showing up on campuses to call these games because once that season kicks, it doesn't matter about the money in a lot of ways. It's about the innocence of college football that still exists, the pageantry, the environment, and that's what makes it so much fun to be a part of.
Last thing before I let you go, how much does broadcasting and evaluating games from that standpoint, how much does it scratch the football itch in Ryan Leaf?
It does it completely. There's no relative itch down the line that needs to be scratched further. It does exactly what it's supposed to. It keeps me well informed. It keeps me involved. Like I said, I turned 50 this year, and I feel like I was just at Boise and we were talking about it, and all of a sudden people started bringing up the last time Boise got shut out was 1997, and when we beat them 58-0. It's like you just get pulled back into the college atmosphere of how much you loved it, and then I get to prepare each and every week the same way I did as a player. You get the film, you break it down, you're looking at the other opposing team's players, you meet with coaches, you show up to the venue, you meet with the coaches on the game pregame, you feel the environment, the music, the locker rooms, the stadiums, the lights, and then you step in front of the microphone and you just do what you've always been able to do, and that's talk about football. You don't complicate it. You harken back to the days where you were sitting on the couch with your dad watching football growing up. That's how I call football games. and it turns out I'm pretty darn good at it. And so I'm really excited when the season comes. We're about 10 days away from getting kicked off here, and I couldn't be more grateful that I get to continue to do this in my life. And so I'm going to be able to bring my son to a game this year. I think he's old enough where he is understanding it. He can be quiet in the broadcast booth and enjoy and see what Dad gets to do for a living. So I'm excited for that too.
Well, it's always great to see all of your success. Miss getting to talk to you more often, so let's stay in better touch. And thanks so much for joining me on the show today.
Oh, you bet, buddy. It's so good to hear from you. Same to you. Congratulations on the family, and tell your wife hello. And yeah, we'll do this again soon.
All right. That's Ryan Leaf. You will see and hear him on USA Sports coverage of the new Pac-12 conference, where, of course, Bronco Mendenhall and the Utah State Aggies will be competing this year. Boise State looks good. Looks really good. I'm intrigued by the Texas State team that he mentioned, the only one outside of the Pacific or Mountain footprint. That's a squad that's kind of on the come up, a campus that's on the come up right now. So going to be an interesting year for the brand new Pac-12 conference. Only 8 teams, so a small conference by modern standards, but that's the way it used to be, guys. You had 8 teams in conferences all the time. Remember when the Pac-12 was the Pac-8? Remember when the Big 12 was the Big 8? Anyway, we'll double up breaks here. We're going to come back. CBS Sports did a really interesting examination on how much it costs to try to be elite in college football right now. Kyle Whittingham mentioned, hey, we're going to be talking about $40 and $50 million rosters in the near future. Well, guess what? The future is now. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, shout out to Taylor, who texted in a good article about the TCU safety dismissal that I started the show talking about. Jacob Fields. And remember, one of the main points I made was that something like this would not happen at the University of Utah because the coaching staff is too dialed in, because the intervention would take place before it escalated to the level of Jacob Fields committed aggravated assault in the locker room, which, okay, it's a fight, right? I mean, the official charge for physically attacking someone for fighting would, I guess, be aggravated assault. This article, which is it's on Bro Bible, so I'm not. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram is cited here, so I'm going to go with that. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram shows that allegedly Jacob Fields, remember, he's the guy who's dismissed from the team. He reached out multiple times, according to the article, he reached out multiple times to the coaching staff, but there were no attempts to de-escalate the brewing tension, which ultimately led to the confrontation in the locker room. Now, this same source also said Sonny Dykes himself did not realize how bad it had gotten. So that would fall on assistant coaches, graduate assistants, people that are a little bit further down the ladder when it comes to authority in a locker room. But it proves the point I was trying to make, that your culture, your leadership, your coaching staff is so massively important for situations like this, because now they lose a projected starting safety when you could have had a little meeting between two players, when you could have had both guys brought into Sonny Dykes' office, and he probably says, hey, if I hear you talking to each other one more time, both of you are going to be running conditioning till the end of the year, whatever it is, right? And it really is a bummer if the player was asking for help from a coaching staff and didn't get that help from a coaching staff. Now, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what a player saying, hey, can you de-escalate this is? Or I don't know if it's a player just be like, get him out of my face, right? Because that's just kind of part of the parlance. Get him away from me or I'm going to beat him up, whatever. And a coach might not take that overly seriously. But according to the article, he reached out multiple times to the coaching staff. And what that means, by the way, is that TCU is going to have some billable hours. This player who came from Louisiana Tech after being a defensive player of the year in that conference is going to be suing somebody to make sure that he gets his NIL money. So have fun with that, TCU. Thanks for the update from Taylor on the text line, 8023. Good job, Taylor. Appreciate you. All right. The cost of doing business in college football is getting worse and worse and worse. The Protect College Sports Act wants to create an actual real salary cap, but in doing so, they would also elevate the salary cap well beyond what it's at right now. The revenue share number is around $21 million this year. The proposed changes in the Protect College Sports Act would elevate that to $47 or $48 million that can be distributed to player personnel. And CBS Sports did an article, an examination of who the biggest spenders in college football are, not next year, not tomorrow, today, right now in college football. Based on what I know about Utah football's revenue share number and the NIL number on top of that, my best guess is that this year's Utah football roster, my best educated guess, is that this year's Utah football roster is costing anywhere from $20 to $24 million. 877-353-0700 if you think you've got a better number than that. And I'm not saying that in a confrontational way. If you're hearing from anyone anywhere that it's more than that, I would love to know. 877-353-0700. 0700. Between revenue share and the true NIL stuff on top of that, I think that we're talking about a $20 to $24 million roster at the University of Utah. And I think that a lot of teams in the Big 12 are very close to that number. Remember, the revenue share that is allowed currently in college sports is for all sports. It's not just for the football team, right? So that $21.5 or $20.5 million, that has to cover basketball, football, women's basketball, gymnastics at the University of Utah. And my understanding of the way that distribution is happening is that football is getting the vast majority of it, but then there is some NIL contribution from the usual suspects, for lack of a better term, that is pushing them up over $20 million. So what does it actually look like, though, around the landscape of college football? According to CBS Sports, and here's the tough thing. Every one of these articles says, according to sources. We don't know who the sources are. Now, you're not going to print something. You're not going to put your name on it if you don't really believe these sources. But I know the sources that I trust, that I talk to about Utah football stuff. I also know sources around Utah football stuff that when they tell me something, I'm kind of like, all right, I'll take that with a grain of salt. Not because I don't like them, but because they're not big J journalists. They're not people verifying, right? They're passing on what they heard to me. So I only go with the people that I feel like are really well informed. And I think that's what CBS Sports is doing here. But regardless, the article says there were 7 teams this year with $40+ million rosters and 5 others that fell just outside of that realm. 6 of those rosters allegedly in the SEC conference: LSU, Texas, Texas A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. $40+ million rosters in college football. If my guesstimate is even remotely accurate, we're talking about trying to compete with, on the national level, teams that have nearly double your budget for player personnel. If you want to know what this looks like in pro sports, go to baseball. You can find the payroll for the Mets. You can find the payroll for the Dodgers. You can find the payroll for the Oakland Athletics and the Minnesota Twins. The results are typically reflective of those disparities, right? $40 million plus rosters at LSU, Texas, Texas A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee. 4 also from the Big Ten: Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, and USC. ACC, only Miami is spending at this level, according to CBS, and Notre Dame is right there with the very, very top. Now, not all of those that I just mentioned, because the math, 6 plus 4 plus 1 plus 1, that's 11. So there are a few teams that fell right outside of the, that's 12, that fell right outside of that $40 million threshold. And the ones that did spend in that elite range are exactly, I just read for you the teams that you would have made the list yourself. Interestingly enough, CBS Sports, this is the article, spoke to 50 sources reporting on roster costs, and there were a few surprising exclusions of the $40 million number. Defending national champions, Indiana did not make the list of the most expensive rosters. Neither did Texas Tech, which has become the poster child for NIL spending. Neither did Alabama, which is, of course, coming off of dynasty years. According to sources, over Nick Saban's last 3 years in Tuscaloosa, Alabama spent less than any SEC program will spend on a single roster in 2026. So this is only a few years ago that Nick Saban walked away. Alabama spent less over his final 3 years, about $20 million, than any SEC program is spending this year. Arkansas, who rolls in to Rice-Eccles Stadium in week 2, is going to be spending more than Alabama did in Saban's final 3 years. However, now they're at that $30+ million range, according to the article. Texas Tech's roster is in the low $30 million range for 2026, according to sources. And that is, the question there is how much of that was gobbled up by Brendan Sorsby's $5+ million salary. So if you're spending 30 plus and 5 of that is dead money, you're still talking about a big, big, big number. Indiana is mentioned in the article as being around $30 million. But that $40 million number that coaches like Kyle Whittingham have been telling you, hey, we're going to be talking $40, $50 million before too long. Before too long is right now. Interestingly enough, this article does not mention Indiana. It does not mention Penn State. It does not mention teams like Michigan State, right? The Big Ten has tiers within itself. You know Ohio State's going to be at the top nationally. You know Oregon's going to be at the very top nationally. Michigan at the top nationally. And the question becomes, all right, Kyle Whittingham, all of us had this in the back of our minds at some point during his tenure with the University of Utah. What would this guy look like at a blue blood university with the best facilities, with the best assistant coaches, with the best weight room, with the best whatever? And then that conversation shifted when NIL became allowable. What would it look like? What would he do if he had the resources at Ohio State or Michigan? And now he's literally at Michigan, and there's been no interruption in their spending despite the scandal. There's been no pause on, hey, maybe we shouldn't put all this money into something that has become kind of a PR nightmare for the university because of this. They're paying big money for big-time players, $40 million or just outside that $40 million range roster right now for Kyle Whittingham today, right now. Does it translate as directly as he told us for years it would? 2 years ago, sat up there and said, hey, you watch. The top 25 in college football from here on out is going to be the top 25 spenders in college football. And we're not far off that. There are some outliers. There are some people that break in without having the insane resources, like the Tulanes, the James Madisons of the world, right? That's because of experienced players. That's because of great coaching. That will always be the case, but it's not going to be the norm for the top 25. You're going to get 2 or 3 of the top 25, not 20 of the top 25. The other 20 are going to be the big spenders, and the big spenders are exactly who you think they are. And for the University of Utah, you're probably never going to be the $40 million spender. For BYU, they've made it pretty clear that they have no interest in being the $40 million spenders, at least publicly. They've talked about, we don't want that to be our reputation. We don't want that to be our legacy. Can you win at a discount? And when I say win, you know what I mean. Can you win on a meaningful level? I think you could beat Texas Tech every other year, even if Texas Tech is spending $40 million. I don't know if you could go into a Big Ten conference where a lot of people think Utah ends up and say, yeah, we'll spend 25 or 30 a year and you spend 40 and we'll still be in the conference championship hunt. I think it's why teams like Wisconsin, who for a long time was right there, Michigan State, right? It was Iowa, Michigan State, Wisconsin that would kind of rotate into the conversation year over year. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, kind of always there, right? And then one of those other 3 or 4 schools would put themselves in the conversation. When it was divisions, it was like Iowa every year. Now there's not divisions. It's like, okay, Iowa's going to rotate in every year because of what? Experience, great coaching, big old corn-fed farm boy offensive lineman, that kind of thing. And it's not like they're operating at a budget discount, right? They're still spending good money like the University of Utah is. Can any coach in college football make up a $15 million or even a $10 million spending gap? I think Curt Cignetti probably did last year. Can he do it moving forward? Will he have to do it moving forward? Or now that the results already spoke for him, is Mark Cuban and the rest of that Indiana booster base going to be like, yeah, dude, you don't have to play at a discount anymore? If this year is not a championship year for BYU and they're spending, let's say, $25 to $30 million on their roster, is that booster base, is that university's power structure willing to reach even deeper into the pocketbook and say, all right, well, this is what it's going to take then. If 25 or 30 million wasn't enough, let's try 35. Meanwhile, Texas Tech next year is going to be like, yeah, we're at 45 this year. What is the level of diminishing returns on this also? Where, I mean, Texas A&M is very conspicuously in these conversations every single year. When is the last time you were actually impressed with the results for Texas A&M? I mean, we go back to pre-NIL. And it was like, okay, who's got the number 1 recruiting class in the country? That was before it was allowable, but they were dropping their bags of cash off. They were the friends of the program, giving people the extra incentives. Jimbo Fisher was getting paid more money than he was ever worth. And when is the last time Texas A&M truly impressed you? Ole Miss, fun story. Made a nice run in the college football playoff last year. Ole Miss is spending more than $40 million on their roster right now. Is that going to be something where you say, money well spent? Tennessee. Are we believers that Tennessee is a national championship contender? Are they a conference championship contender? Are they a bona fide college football playoff, actually make some noise type team? Because if you spend $40 million on a roster at USC and you're not in the college football playoff again, do you know what that means for Lincoln Riley? Do you know what that means for recruitment in Southern California? Do you know what that means for the blue blood status of USC football? If you can't buy your way, there's all of these questions. And by the way, do you know what that means if you're BYU and USC suddenly has a vacancy at their head coaching position?
Potential move.
I mean, if BYU or Utah or Texas Tech, for that matter, has a better season than USC, spending less, how do you justify giving these people these jobs? If Morgan Scalley, operating on what USC would dub an unsustainable, unacceptable low budget, if Morgan Scalley can win 10 games this year at the University of Utah and Lincoln Riley wins 8 or 9 at USC, how can you look at somebody like that and say, yeah, we want you to be our head coach? You can't.
Yeah, like where are the question marks at, basically? The
cost of doing business right now has been set by the elites in college football. They think it's $40+ million to win a national championship. Now, Indiana did not spend that much last year, according to this article, and they won the national championship. If you're Notre Dame football, who has spent an insane amount of money, mostly on high school players and on player retention, which is, by the way, a very different strategy than a lot of teams have employed. They go out, they get the top recruits they can in high school, and then they keep paying them to stay. They're selective with their transfer portal. They have to be. There's some academic strictures there that are really hard to get by at Notre Dame, although Notre Dame football can do it, and they have done it in the past. CJ Carr, is CJ Carr going to be worth the $5 million or the $4 million that they're paying him this year? If you're Notre Dame and you spend $40+ million on a roster and you flirt with, and you're almost a national champion again, it's been 40 damn years. That's the price of doing business right now, according to the top spenders in college football. And look, Utah's not there. They're not going to be there as long as they're part of the Big 12 Conference. BYU's not there. I don't think they're ever going to be there because of the philosophical disagreement with having to be a top spender. And yet our expectations are that they win at the same level as Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas A&M, Tennessee, etc. Food for thought. Daily Dump is coming up next. We have an absolute treat of a group of stories for you. A reminder also that the Road Home Apple Tree live for the last day today. Venmo at Advocates donations and hook kids up that are going back to school. They need clothes. They need shoes. They need backpacks. Families at the Road Home. The kids are going back to school alongside your kids. Your kids that you took to Target, that you took to wherever, and you got them the nice stuff, and you got them the back-to-school shoes. You went to the Nike outlet. Maybe, if you can, give a family at the Road Home an opportunity to do the same thing for their kid. Venmo at Advocates Donations, theappletreeforkids.com or ESPN700sports.com, and help out. Be a child's advocate as they all head back to school. The Daily Dump is brought to you by Valley Plumbing, and that is next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. we've had plenty of stories in recent days, I should say, about the resurgence of card collecting, sports card collecting, Pokemon cards, Magic the Gathering cards. Like, the hobby has found a new life, or it's in another golden age. A bunch of these manufacturers, Topps, Panini, they're all doing like really creative and interesting stuff with the cards. And there's some big ticket items out there in these boxes that I don't know if normal people can ever get them, but you don't have to get them. Today I learned, this is real. I'm almost 43 years old. I did not realize you could collect cards this way, but our first story in the Daily Dump brought to you by Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. The truck with the duck. Go to valleyplumbing.com. Make your appointment without ever even having to pick up a phone. The first story in the Daily Dump today is about a guy who got a potentially multi-million-dollar one-of-one Cooper Flag autograph debut card. He's the owner of the card. He has never actually physically been in the same room as the card. He did not open the pack that had the card in it. He has not touched the card. He probably never will touch the card. And this man is the owner of the card because I did not know this, and I apologize to all of you out there who did. 877-353-0700. He participates in his card collecting by buying the rights to certain players or certain teams in boxes opened by other people. Zach, did you know about this?
Not at all.
Okay.
No.
What a wild way to go. Now, there is something deeply satisfying about ripping a pack of cards. And, oh, look at that. A Dikembe Mutombo holograph. Cool. Right? And then there's always like there's, Jaron Collins. Respect to you, sir. It's like, oh, here we are. You get good ones, you get bad ones, whatever. I did not know this was a thing. There's a company called Roadie Breakers, okay? It's in Rhode Island, and their whole thing is they do these packs. They open these packs, and you can go on to roadiecards.com or Roadie Breakers, whatever. You can buy the rights to certain players or certain teams out of these boxes that they're opening. So I'm on the website. I just learned about this morning. I'm on the website right now. They've got a 2025 Topps Resurgence Football 4-box hobby packs. They've got some good stuff. They've got holograph cards in here. There's some big ones. This break consists of 4 hobby boxes of 2025 Topps Resurgence Football. The break runs with a pick your team style. You'll receive all cards for any teams you own in the break. All cards ship. This break does qualify for the 1-out-of-1 bounty pool. What to expect in a hobby box? There's usually, in a hobby box, 1 autograph card and a rookie relic autograph card. I don't know what that is. I think I'm looking at an example here. There's like a Gronk rookie card, a Barry Sanders autograph card. So I think you're supposed to expect one of those in each box. Okay, this is football, not basketball like the Cooper Flag one came out of. And I can go right now. They're going to open these things later. I can buy for $15. I can buy all of the Arizona Cardinals cards out of this box. I don't get to open them. I don't get to open the packs. I can watch them on a stream while they open the packs. I can spend $25 to get all the Baltimore Ravens out of here. I can get $75, give them $75 for either the Broncos or the Cincinnati Bengals. $49 for the Lions, $29 for the Texans, $19 and I can get every Miami Dolphin in this box. $29 only for the Seattle Seahawks in here. If I want the Tennessee Titans, it's $159.
Why for the Titans?
I guess because maybe they think Cam Ward is a cooler, better, awesomer player. I don't know.
I mean, it could be a rookie debut patch or, because I know they cut out the jersey sometimes for the debut stuff. So it could be that and signatured. But honestly, it's just not as satisfying. You don't get to rip the pack yourself.
I mean, am I going to get a Carnell Tate autographed jersey card and feel like that was worth my $169 investment? So this guy in the Cooper Flag case, the card was pulled by this Rhode Island company called Roadie Breakers, okay? The collector was from North Carolina. He paid for the rights to the Dallas Mavericks out of the box. He paid $515 for this Cooper Flag 1-of-1 autographed rookie card. So he effectively paid $515 in a lottery. His name is Jason Williams, and this guy is going to get whatever the auction price less the, finders and handlers fees here. So his $515 on a pack of cards that he never got to touch himself translates to $1 million plus, probably $2 million for him. Is this kind of card collecting, Zach, something you could get yourself into?
I mean, if I was rich, maybe. But at the same time, I'd be much rather ripping the pack and pulling it with more excitement than watching it on a stream where you're with friends and you're ripping packs all together and you guys can celebrate together. That's just more me.
I am not trusting enough either to where I'm like, okay, I paid your $150, whatever, for my favorite team. If you get this crazy cool card out of that pack, I trust that it's actually going to come to me, or that exactly. I actually do have I'd be like, because if I'm Roadie Breakers and I now pulled this $1 million card, am I really going to be like, okay, it's yours?
Yeah, no.
I mean, I guess you have to, but wow, what a strange way to collect cards. I didn't know it was a thing. I learned that today. Also at the Daily Dump, this is incredible. An Alabama high school football coach had to resign after being arrested for public intoxication while he was impersonating a reporter so he could be on the sideline to investigate, to scout his week 1 opponent. This is just fantastic. It's from Guntersville High School. This coach resigned from his position because he was watching. There's a place called Arab High School. Who knew there was a place called Arab High School in Alabama, by the way?
Agreed.
He identified himself as a member of the media to get access to the sideline during the Arab High School Jamboree football game, which is like their inter-squad scrimmage. It's our old Jordan High School maroon and gray game.
Yeah, my Park City red and white game.
He tried to get access to the sideline while drunk, pretending to be a reporter so he could watch their inter-squad scrimmage because his Guntersville High School was going to play Arab High School in week 1. That is a level of hilarious dedication that I don't think people fully appreciate.
That's crazy.
I mean, what are we doing here, folks? This is also big news if you are a Utah Mammoth fan. Hockey is going to be back sooner than later. We're right around the corner from Utah football being back, BYU football being back, Jazz basketball, Utah Mammoth hockey right behind them. So it's going to be an incredible fall here in our home state. This is coming from NHL Public Relations. For the upcoming 2026-2027 season, the NHL and Fanatics is their official apparel and jersey partner, sweater partner, will introduce Hometown Remix, the first 32-team special edition uniform, apparel, and headwear program Designed and developed by Fanatics since becoming the league's authentic on-ice uniform outfitter in 2024. The Hometown Remix collection will be anchored by special edition uniforms that uniquely and authentically celebrate the fans, the city, the local culture of each team. More information on the Hometown Remix program, which spans on-ice uniforms, authentic and replica jerseys, and a broad apparel and headwear collection for every team, will follow shortly after the season begins. You're getting the NHL equivalent of the NBA City Edition uniforms. This is phenomenal. Now, the Mammoth, they don't have a throwback, right? The possibilities of what this are going to look like, endless. Hometown Remix Edition uniforms, which means if you're a Mammoth fan right now, you have your black hometown jersey, right? If you're a hardcore, maybe you got one of the white away sweaters as well. Coming up this year, you now have Hometown Remix sweater, and you're going to have a Winter Classic sweater.
Oh, yeah. I forgot we got the Winter Classic this year.
Winter Classic happening New Year's Eve at Rice-Eccles Stadium, Colorado Avalanche, Utah Mammoth. So we are 3 years into this thing, and you already get 2 new uniforms in 1 year in 2026. Let's go, baby. Now, Fanatics, their actual, like, authentic game stuff, wildly expensive. Insanely expensive.
I agree on that.
It's like $300 for a game sweater. However, Hometown Remix gets me excited. Now, I have to be fair. Half the time they really screw these things up. Like the City Edition NBA uniforms, sometimes are awesome. I think the Jazz ones have been good. Other cities, sometimes you're just like, what have you done?
Yeah.
So I thought that with the rebrand from the Utah Hockey Club to the Utah Mammoth, I thought while the process got a little bit weird and clunky at some point, I thought they ended up with the right thing. I thought they ended up with a really cool logo. Some of the proposed logos were maybe even a little cooler, but I thought they ended up with a really cool logo. I like the color scheme. I think it's all good. I'm very curious what the Hometown Remix collection is going to look like. Because remember, authentically celebrating the fans, the city, and the local culture of each team can be interpreted a lot of different ways here in Salt Lake City. So 877-353-0700. Shoot me your designs for the Hometown Remix. Email them to me if you want to. Tweet them at me. Hometown Remix, the jersey, the Utah Mammoth sweater that you never saw happen that now potentially you could see happen because of the Hometown Remix program. I love this. I love that the NHL is doing this. There's nothing wrong with offering your fans another alternative. And for all of the people who are like, oh, it's a money grab. Oh, just don't buy them. Just don't buy it. You're right. It is. These businesses are trying to make money all the time. Just don't buy the alternative sweater if you don't like it. It's got to be, you got to go with the mountain blue, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Because you're white, you're black, you got to go with a blue alternate.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Pretty cool. All right, NHL Public Relations. I see you. I appreciate your announcement. Look for the truck with the Duck Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling for any of your drain cleaning, plumbing, or your HVAC needs. If your air conditioner is causing you problems, if you're worried about the furnace turning them back on when you need it this year, look no further than an appointment with Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. They get out there in a timely fashion. They've got excavation plumbing they can handle for you, a one-stop shop for almost all of the needs you have as a homeowner. Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Tell them OC sent you. Morgan Scally is going to join us in 10 minutes, one short segment before we get there. Sean O'Connell Show continues on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, it's a Wednesday, right? You got nothing better to do today. Tell your boss you're taking off a little bit early from work. I want you to head onto the freeway, get out on the I-80, go west, young man, to Tooele County, and find yourself the Stansbury Park Golf Course. $45 for a round of 18 on a weekday, which, of course, would be today. $50 for a round on the weekends. The waits are not long. It's not a crowded course. There's no overpriced green fees. You're just going to get out there and you're going to enjoy pure golf in a surprisingly peaceful, incredible setting. You might see a little bit of wildlife out there on the course, some bunnies, a deer or two. Challenging, but not impossible. The right kind of course for you to enjoy on a weekday round, or even if you want to get the whole foursome out there and head out on the weekend. Stansbury Park, right off the I-80, because right now, not a lot of traffic. You'll probably get there and back sooner than if you go down to, I don't know, Thanksgiving Point. If you head up to one of the Bountiful courses, maybe even one of the courses here in the Valley. Stansbury Park Golf Course, you can book your tee times at stansburypark.gov/golf course, stansburypark.gov/golf course. Great rates, gorgeous greens, and it's only a few minutes away. Head out there right now. I always appreciate feedback from our listeners on the text line, 877-353-0700. Sam says, go down the rabbit hole. See, there's been scandals in the card collecting world with these card breaks, card switching, break fixing, etc. No shortage of scandals to choose from. And Jordan weighed in on the text line because I was expressing my skepticism, confusion, I don't know the right way to put it, over why this would be the choice for card collecting. And he mentioned that the hobby boxes are usually thousands of dollars. So you spend $100 or $500 or $200 or whatever to get the players or the team that you want, and then you get to participate in having that hobby box and be part of it. I guess now my only obstacle, because it actually makes sense. If I could just go buy a box of like 49ers cards, I probably would if I thought I was going to get anything good.
Yeah, I would do the same thing if it was the Broncos.
Right? I mean, so it kind of makes sense. Now my only obstacle is the trust factor. Because that's what I'm saying. I do not believe that you're going to give me what I got.
I'm right there with you. Right there with you.
I wonder if Morgan Scalley collects cards.
I was just literally thinking about that too, honestly.
You know what? We're going to take a break now so we can get to the head Utah football coach on time. Morgan Scalley joins us next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome to hour number 3 of the Sean O'Connell Show. Your kids are back in school this week. We are just over 2 weeks away from Utah football kicking off at Rice-Eccles Stadium on a Thursday night. And the head coach of your Utah Utes is here on the Sean O'Connell Show now. Morgan Scally, welcome to the program. How are you, sir?
What's up, brother? Good practice today. Just got off the field. Guys are eating, getting ready for meetings, but a ton of progress.
What does progress look like from a practice-to-practice standpoint at this juncture of camp, where there are a couple of bumps and bruises and the enthusiasm of the season being back has started to maybe shake a little because you're sore and all that kind of stuff? What are you looking for when it comes to that progress, Morgan?
Well, a lot of it, I mean, you're not installing at this point. It's all operational cleanliness. You know, you just want to be disciplined, lining up fast. Offense dictates the tempo. Defense is flying to the football and, you know, just teaching everything you can about situational football, situational awareness. We can't get enough of that, you know, particularly with as many new guys as you have. But right now it's just about cleaning things up. And but I honestly like where we're at right now.
Are your position battles where you have them as close to resolution as you'd like them to be at this point?
We're getting there. Yeah, we're getting there. We've had some bumps and bruises along the way at certain positions, and that can cause some delay in finding out, you know, whether guys can do it or not. We still are going to continue to practice physical. The live tackling stuff is intermittent in the practices that we have. You're never going to see a large dose scrimmage. But, you know, we got to find out who can tackle, who can break tackles. And, but I would say we're probably 85% in there when it comes to, you know, deciding who the starters are.
Can we have I know you've been asked about the offensive line a lot. I'm so intrigued by the safety room. I know it's a position group that's near and dear to your heart, having played it and coached it for so long. And you've got talent there. I think there's at least 4 guys that I could see as kind of every down starters. How is that shaping up?
Well, it's good because it's a good problem to have. You got the beauty of that position room is you've got guys that could play the nickel position. And so teams that try and create issues with more athletic tight ends, you're fine because you've got, you know, that's who the safeties normally covered. But once you get into 11 personnel and 10 personnel, and maybe you're asking a safety to cover a slot receiver, you know, I feel really confident in Jackson Benny being able to do that. Rabbit Evans, Tillman, Nate Tillman's come a long way as well. So you're able to play in those 3 safety packages, much like we did, would have been with Sione Vaki and R.J. Hubert and Cole Bishop. So, you know, that's where we need to go. That's where we need to go. Plus, it allows us to blitz and do some things with those guys. So, really pleased with the safety room. You talk about Nate Ritchie and his experience and the snaps he's given us as well. And it's a really good group.
Have there been any surprises? Any guys that weren't on your radar necessarily is going to be needing, you know, reps, and we got to get this guy some snaps that have emerged in fall camp?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's been good to get Monica Carvalho back at the slot receiver position, just because he didn't participate in spring because of his injury, and you know, he's one of those, when you talk about separation, it's, you know, a lot of that is how well you run your routes, and very good route runner, very quick, good hands. Tobias Merriweather's a guy last year that, you know, didn't get a lot of production, but has shown some very good things in fall camp. And, you know, you got Zip. We got a good amount of wide receivers. It's really good to have that depth there, depth at linebacker, depth at D end, tight end, is a spot where we're still working some things out. But I love Benny and Will Money. You got your Rhinos that provide some versatility and allowing you to get a little bit physical, but also they're athletic enough they can cause some issues. I would say Matiaki Halu's probably the biggest surprise at camp. Not that we didn't think that he could do it at the running back position, just he's shown so much in the ability to catch the ball, run with physicality, and pretty good vision too. So maybe Halu's the answer for that.
Interesting. Morgan Scally, Utah head football coach, is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, just off the practice field and obviously in the heat of camp right now. How has the culture of this particular roster in your first year as a head coach kind of shaped up through camp? It feels like that, you had spring ball, obviously an off-season program, and now as you get closer to install next week and things like that, are you finding that the leaders you expected to be leaders are there? Is there somebody that wasn't penciled in that way that is more of a vocal person? The overall kind of like vibe and culture of this particular version of Utah football, what does it look like?
Well, I'm pleased with what I've seen in terms of the progress of the offense. The defense has kind of known this culture for a while. But to see the buy-in from the offense and, Wayshawn Parker's one that wasn't much in terms of, being a vocal guy last year. He was a newcomer, but man, has he stepped up and practices the right way. He's willing to call people out, but he's also willing to do that because everyone knows he's taking care of his business. So love what I've seen out of him, and it's just the offense buying into team football and the fact that one guy gets the ball, boys, and what are you going to do? It's like basketball. 80% of the game, you're not going to have the ball, so be great at that 80%. Whether it's setting picks, whether it's going to work the boards, whatever it is, on the offense. You can kind of tell if a wide receiver's a me guy. If when the ball's thrown, he just turns and watches. Like, don't watch football, play football. If you want to watch football, come stand by me on the sideline. Play football. Go block. Get out in front of people. Go do the team thing. Celebrate together. So that's what's been fun, is to see that showing up more and more every day.
How do those conversations go when it's just you and especially your offensive coaches? You just said it. There's only one football. And when we look at this roster and what we know about it, it's like, man, I think there's a bunch of weapons here, and you probably want to get the ball into everyone's hands at some point during these games. That's not the most realistic game plan, I imagine, sometimes. So how do those conversations go with Kevin McGiven and these position coaches as camp progresses? Like, hey, before we decide whether or not we're going to give it to him against Idaho, let's see what he can do tomorrow in practice. How does that go?
Well, you're looking for, discipline and consistency. Are they consistent practice after practice after practice? I think we can have a good practice, and you put as much stress and pressure on them as possible just to find out who those guys are, who's going to catch it in a pressure situation, who's going to do what you ask, who's going to, when it's on two, who's going to jump, can you hold your water? So, Kevin, his staff's awesome. So much of culture is about everyone being on the same page, being unified in your message and holding people accountable to it. So very pleased with that group, a bunch of good teachers. And like I said, we've got some good players.
How are you different during this camp, your first as the head man versus, the defensive coordinator, the position coach, Morgan Scally, during a fall camp?
Well, you just don't hear me a lot. If you were at practice last year, Scally's always yelling at something.
If I'm not hearing Scally at practice, it feels like it's not a Utah practice.
Yeah, so something's up. Yeah. So no, it's much more. Is practice going the way? It's how we're doing things. Are we running to the ball? Are we running from drill to drill? Are we being efficient with our time? practicing the right way. Yeah, it's a different role for me. I'm still, very anal about the details and about, us behaving the way we've asked these kids to behave, living our culture, but you just don't, you don't hear me. I'm not screaming as much. Probably better for my voice box.
Who has taken that on then? There's got to be somebody out there who if I were able to, you practice when I'm on air. So
it was me. It's me and Shaw, right? Those are the two that you're usually always hearing and going crazy. But I tell you what, Mark Yatawaya, he's picked up the torch.
Okay, I like that.
That's him and Shaw. I would say would be the two that you're always hearing.
Okay. We're efforting. I'm trying to get your strength and conditioning coach, Steve Saunders, on the show as soon as possible because everybody that we have talked to, players, other reporters that are coming on to share their thoughts of what they see at practice, there is a constant attention being paid to body composition, especially with your big guys, your offensive and defensive linemen. And everyone's making comments about your own physique too, which is hilarious. I mean, you're shredded right now. I don't know how you pulled that off. I need to get on the Morgan Scally program. I don't know what peptides you're on.
I'm not shredded. A lot of cookie butter chip ice cream from Blacksmith, just so you know.
I don't know if that works out that way for the rest of us. But in all seriousness, right? The strength and conditioning foundation that has been so important to Utah football for so long, it's a big change with somebody new and a different voice, and it was a big story over the offseason, and the players are speaking very positively about it from an injury standpoint and from just a performance standpoint. Are the results what you expected them to be when you made the change?
100%. Yeah, I knew what I wanted going in, and there's always difficult decisions that you have to make, but I knew that Steve spoke my language when it came to my vision is the strength and conditioning and how we train and everything being position specific and making us better football players in the weight room, not necessarily better weightlifters. Everything we do has to have a purpose, has to have an answer to the why. And if that answer is, well, that's just the way we've always done it. Well, nope, that's wrong. That we've got to be on the cutting edge. We've got to be. Are we doing the best thing for these kids? And so, Steve came in, and I'm a believer because I've been doing it. I wanted to make sure that I got in the weight room and obviously Weddle's endorsement was huge, but just the fact that we had other NFL guys with Inoke and Luther and Jordan, and all these guys were like, yes, this is, he's speaking our language. This is what we need. And the results speak for themselves in terms of the body composition, in terms of our guys feeling stronger, feeling healthier, and but it's also the buy-in from the players, attacking the weight room, not just as a checklist item, okay, this is what I do as a football player, but how is the weight room translating to me being a better football player? And if you can see that and see how this specific lift or this specific technique is making me a better football player, well, then you get more buy-in.
How is Devin Dampier different in his second camp as the projected starter versus last year?
Well, I think he's a much more aware of eyes are on him, much more aware of how he behaves matters, in terms of, if we're asking, everyone's held to the standard. It's not just, okay, you're the starting quarterback and you're the highest paid guy we got. Like, you got to do what you want to do. No, you live the culture just like we're asking everyone else to live the culture. And if you don't see it that way, then you don't understand leadership and, how culture is created. So that's what I'm proud of Devin, is that he's bought into that. You look at the things that he does off the field with our players, inviting players to come out to his place, the team building stuff. Like, he's very aware of his role on this team, and that all eyes are on him.
This is going to be my last question because I can be guilty of taking up too much of your time. I think it's important. I don't know if it's something that I just got used to as a player who wasn't this guy or observing. When you go out and you watch a practice, even when it's a bunch of great players, and I think you've got a bunch of really good ones, you can pick out the one or two or three usually, even as a casual observer, where you're like, that's a different animal. That's a dog right there. That's the alpha in this group. Do we know who those guys are yet for Utah football? Like the Devin Lloyd, the Spencer Fano, the outlier from the outliers, if that's the right way to say it.
I think we're still in the process of finding. I would hate to just like start listing names and all of a sudden guys are like, well, what about me? But one guy I'm just extremely excited about just because he's put the work in, and he's, as Marshawn Lynch would say, all about that action, is Wayshawn.
Okay.
I cannot wait to see what this guy does. He's lifting the right way. He's eating the right way. He's practicing the right way. So I'm excited for his season.
Well, we're very excited for the season overall. I appreciate you giving us some time today. I know it's very, very busy. We'll cut you loose now, Coach, and we'll see you up there in just over a couple of weeks.
Oh, see, you're the man, brother. Can't wait.
Thank you, Morgan Scally. Love you, dude. Holy cow, we are so close, ladies and gentlemen. That is your head coach at the University of Utah, Morgan Scally. The reason I asked him that last question is because those tone setter type players are important for a roster to have. And I love the answer, and I didn't expect him to start rattling off a bunch of dudes, because if you're rattling off a bunch of guys, you're lying, right? And Morgan Scally's not ever going to be that guy who gives a fake answer on something. So when Morgan was a player on this Utah football team, he was one of those dudes. You walk out there, and his presence was vocal and noticeable because of that. But, right, the way that guy moved was a little bit different. The way that Eric Weddle moved was a little bit different. The way that Chris Kemoyatu on that Fiesta Bowl team moved. The way that Alex Smith carried himself. If you were not even a football fan, you could walk out onto a field like that and you could be like, oh, okay, that guy. I'm going to pay attention to that guy. Having that at the running back position, if Wayshawn Parker ends up being that, that's important. And I'm not just talking about who's the biggest, scariest, most impressive body. It's way more than that. That wasn't Morgan when he was a player, right? That wasn't Weddle when he was a player. I think that, Devin Lloyd kind of checked all those boxes when he was a linebacker for the University of Utah. But you could be a soccer fan and walk out there and see Devin Lloyd and just be like, oh, geez, what is that? Why is that big guy moving faster than the small guy? Why was he able to track down the 175-pound slot receiver on that crossing route? Like, why was he there already when the running back came through the hole, right? You can notice some of these things, and you got to have them even on really great teams, even like a super loaded Ohio State roster or a super loaded Oregon roster. You're going to have those guys. BYU's got a really complete team this year, right? There's a couple of guys where you're going to watch them and you're going to go, oh, okay, that's the Satawala kid everyone's been talking about. Now I understand, right? We don't know who they are for the University of Utah yet because you've got this like sort of, it's a peanut butter sandwich where you've spread the peanut butter almost evenly across every position group, every player, right? If I tell you Rabbit Evans, okay, thumbs up. Yeah, I like Rabbit Evans. Nate Ritchie. Yeah, Nate Ritchie, thumbs up. Okay, I like Nate Ritchie. Jackson Benny. Yeah, I like Jackson Benny. Like maybe Jackson Benny is that guy who ends up being an outlier from the outliers, as I phrased it, right? Kelvin Obot, from a physical standpoint, should be that guy eventually. Is he yet? I don't think so. Right? Is Zaraway Williams just because he's 6'8"? Well, I'm talking about when he plays. Is he the dude that finishes every block? Is he the dude that he's just a little bit quicker off the line? His knockback is a little bit more significant. Is that person on the defensive line? Right? Star Lotulelei was unnaturally quick for his size.
Yeah.
And you noticed it even when he was playing next to other good players. You would notice that his punch was a little bit faster, that it moved the offensive lineman just a little bit more, that he was a little bit more solid on the double team than anyone else. And those were really good players around Star, right? Paul Kruger was a dude that you noticed when you walked out onto the football field because of how fluid his movement was, because of how graceful a man that size was trying to bend the edge. And you have to have them on this Utah football team. You can win even if you don't have, like, obvious ones, but you have to have somebody that everyone else on this roster is effectively chasing. How do I make myself as good as that guy? How do I make it so that when I appear on the film next to him, it's not, oh my gosh, look how good he is and you stink comparatively, right? And I don't know, like Devin Dampier in his New Mexico film was that dude. He was healthy in his New Mexico film for a lot of it, and he was playing against inferior competition. He was playing at a level of football where the guys are just, there's fewer of the Devin Dampiers in the Mountain West Conference than obviously in the Big 12 Conference. When you step up to a higher level, like Bird Ficklin might be that dude, right? That we saw, like when Bird ran the football last year, he is that guy. He's the outlier of the outliers, where there's just something about his vision, the way that he falls forward. I mean, the fact that you think a big hit's coming, that contact is going to be flush, and then there's just enough wiggle, enough adjustment to path or trajectory that you're like, oh, okay, never mind. That ended up being a 15-yard gain instead of a 1-yard loss. Like Bird could be that guy. 877-353-0700. For you, who are going to be the outliers of the outliers? I think we probably got kind of lazy with it last year because at this juncture of the season in fall camp, we were just like, yeah, it's Spencer Fano, because it was. And it still is Spencer Fano, right? It was like Spencer Fano is, even at the NFL level, he's showing that he is an outlier there. A guy that big is not supposed to be that nimble, and it was noticeable. Caleb Lombo on the other side was pretty darn close to the exact same thing. The other offensive linemen, awesome, really good, experienced, tough, capable. But there's something about they make it look easy. The freaks in the room make it look easier than the other guys do. The reaction time for like a Clark Phillips was a little bit different than even the other really good guys who played around him. When Julian Blackman broke on a football, he was there a half step before everyone else because he didn't have the same like hesitancy in his processing, or he didn't have the same false step where he went half an inch the wrong way at one time or another. And it's something that just separates the really, really great ones from the ones who are maybe even all conference, maybe even good, but they're not like the holy, what is that? So I appreciate him giving us at least a taste of that. Wayshawn Parker might be that guy. Because if you have a running back, especially a running back who I think is going to touch the ball about 20-something times a game, and he has done everything the right way, like Morgan is suggesting, and he is confident because of that, And we spoke with Wayshawn at Big 12 Media Days, and he was not shy about wanting more from himself and expecting more. Not wanting is the wrong way to say it. Expecting more from himself because of exactly what Morgan was talking about, because of the preparation. Never mind that he's physically strong, that he's talented. Everyone in college football at this level is physically strong and talented. The worst guy on Utah's football team right now, like the least impressive physical specimen on that football team right now, outside of the kickers, is somebody who's very physically strong and impressive. I'm talking the number 104 out of 105 position players. You're like, wow, that kid he just squatted 500 pounds, right? They all have it. They all have that. The thing that puts you on a different level is how easy it is, how smooth it is, how fluid it is, how much you make it look like you're supposed to be doing it, not that you're forcing your body to do it. And the more confident you are because of the work, because of the preparation, the easier that is, right? There's no nerves associated with it. You get into these flow states as athletes if you have that confidence. I appreciate Morgan jumping on for, 15, 16 minutes. I could pick his brain on all that stuff for like an hour. And we could get he's in a position where he probably doesn't want to share a ton right now, but having versatility in the safety room, massively, massively important for this Utah football roster. Even if all of those guys stay healthy, and he alluded, he kind of shouted out like a Sione Vake and an RJ Hubert, and the guys that can come downhill, the guys that can play in the box when you need them to, the guys that can play the nickel position when you need them to. Not every safety is capable of that. Not every safety is built the right way. Not every safety has the right mindset or the right footwork / skill set for that. So having some versatility there is going to be big for Colton Swan in his first year as a defensive coordinator. I didn't get to, I should have. It's my bad. It's bad interview by me. I didn't get to talking about, the defensive line and establishing the physicality in the trenches there. That's a faux pas by me. Because that improved run defense that is drastically needed for Utah only happens if those guys play well. And those guys only play well in the season if they're preparing well and building the base now. I don't have any doubts about the way that they're coached. I think Luther Ellis is criminally underrated from the national circles. Everyone respects what he did as a player and who he was as a player. I don't know that people fully appreciate the impact he has as a coach. I don't know if I even fully appreciate the impact he has as a coach. Big thanks to Morgan Scally. Shout out to Keeler McJunkin and Paul Kirk and everyone who makes it possible for us to interview the head coach at the University of Utah while he is in camp. Didn't have enough time. I should have asked him about if he ever collected cards.
I was debating about getting in here about it.
If he's still ripping packs,
I would have gotten your ear about it, but I didn't want to ruin a good interview that you were doing over there.
And by the way, he laughed it off. Morgan is shredded right now.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
He is ripped, dude. Morgan Scally, if he takes his shirt off now, it probably looks better than when he was a player. Dude is jacked. You know what? That's going to be my goal. That's going to be my goal before the end of the season. We're going to see if we could get him to go tarps off and give us a flex.
Yes.
You think we can make it happen?
I think we could make it happen. If you show up.
Is Morgan Scally only getting ripped so that he can celebrate a game by ripping off his shirt and waving it around? Probably not. Big thanks to Morgan for hopping on. I'm sure Spence Checketts will give you a chance to re-listen to that if you missed it on his show today. It'll also be available at ESPN700sports.com and on the ESPN 700 app. Sean O'Connell Show continues. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. I don't know if there are any Chargers fans out there. They don't even have fans in their own home stadium or home state, but I think Justin Herbert and people's affection for Justin Herbert got a few folks thinking they might be Charger fans. Maybe. Ultimately, that franchise appears to be snake bit. Their starting center, Tyler Biadasz, is going to be out for an indeterminate amount of time because of an injury, a left knee injury during a joint practice against the 49ers. Now, Justin Herbert is among the many young quarterbacks in the NFL that we have a tendency to want to like crown and say, oh, this guy's the next best whatever. He's the next great whatever. This guy's going to be John Elway someday. He has not, from a team standpoint, he has not dragged the Chargers into the spotlight the way a lot of people hoped he would be able to. Jim Harbaugh talks about him like he is the greatest thing that has ever happened to the game of football. I'm a Justin Herbert supporter, fan to a certain extent. I think he's a really nice player. I don't know that he's going to be the guy that changes the entire outlook for a franchise, especially when the offensive line continues to be snake bit in LA. I almost said San Diego. So bummer if you're a fan of the San Diego Chargers that are actually the LA Chargers. On the injury front in the NFL, you're starting to hear the bumps and bruises accumulate out of joint practices and camps there. Position battles being won and lost in college football. Several teams announcing their starting quarterbacks, which is, for a fan of the University of Utah and someone who has followed this program for so long, it's almost a hilarious thing to see, because why would you ever give someone the advantage of knowing who your starting quarterback was going to be? They're going to figure it out soon enough anyway, but for so long, it was almost against the policy of the local coaches and teams here to go out there and give some transparency, to give a real answer on that kind of a stuff. You're seeing announcements come out of North Carolina. You're seeing announcements in Stanford. Stanford, actually, there's a couple of local connections still associated with Stanford. Steve Tate's kid, as far as I know, still playing there. Stanford is they're going to be starting a former Michigan quarterback, a guy who started 4 games at the University of Michigan, Davis Warren. Actually, he started more than 4 games. Davis Warren at Michigan had 1,100 yards passing, 7 touchdowns. Oof. 9 interceptions, though, back in 2024. He tore his ACL in the right knee, sat out the whole 2025 season. He transferred to Stanford in January. And you want to talk about a guy who's been through a lot already as a young football player, as a young athlete. He actually had leukemia as a junior in high school and ended up coming back to play football after successfully beating cancer. So I think it's fair we could say we're rooting for Davis Warren to have good things happen for him at Stanford. I'm still waiting, after we gave you the conversation about from CBS Sports article about the cost of doing business in college football now. I'm still waiting for Stanford to kind of like decide that they care and announce that they're actually going to try to field a competitive roster, and they're going to give Tavita Pritchard and company a chance in the ACC. It's not like you have to have you don't have to have a group of All-Americans to win in the ACC right now. Miami is good. I think Cal actually is going to have a really interesting roster this year. Duke, North Carolina, Florida State, some of these teams, Clemson. You don't, to insert yourself quickly and emphatically back into the top 4 in the ACC conference, I really don't think would be as hard as Stanford fans are making it out to be, or as people who have watched Stanford football, which went from being a national power, perennial national power, despite insane academic restrictions, despite what USC was at the time, what Oregon was at the time, what Utah ended up being as they came into the conference. I mean, Stanford was a big deal. And they have just fallen so far off a cliff in a way that, I mean, what other program has done that so aggressively recently? Still a place I would want to send my kid to go play football because you're going to get a Stanford degree. And that by itself is worth the price of admission, which you don't have to pay, of course, because you're on scholarship and you're getting a little bit NIL money probably. But I'm still waiting for Stanford to care. For one of the dozens and dozens of 9-figure or 10-figure alumni there to say, you know what, I'm going to try to push some of this money towards being a Stanford booster. It'd be really fascinating to see the Cardinal get back to intellectual brutality and football relevance. It's going to be one that confuses me for a long time because I thought they had a good chance with NIL and one of the most successful and lucrative fan bases and booster bases in all of college sports. I thought they had a real chance to do something special in this new era, and they've gone the opposite direction. But you don't turn in to hear me talking about Stanford football. We're talking Utah football every single day here on your home of the Utes. Our camp coverage and our interview with Morgan Scalley today brought to you by Beer Bar, Citron Cooperman, your Utah Velux dealers at Aladdin Industries. Who else? It's been a really interesting fall camp so far in that the extra access we were given starts to come to an end this weekend. The final announced media observation is on Friday. We'll see if Saturday they send us something out. And then it'll be install after that. Camp, I asked Morgan Scalley deliberately about what kind of position battles are they where they thought they would be. And, knowing that he's not going to give me concrete answers on who is emerged or who the starter at a given position or who the starting combination in the offensive line is going to be, he did express some confidence that they're where they need to be on that front. And apparently at least one name that you probably didn't have your radar heading into camp that you have to watch out for, perhaps even in game one, Matiaki Heilu, former Stansbury High School. What's their mascot, Zach? What's the Stansbury mascot?
Ooh, I think I played them twice when I was in high school. I think it's the Stallions. It might be the Stallions.
Okay. Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
Stansbury High School, the Stallions. The Stansbury Stallions. Blue, black, and silver, apparently, the color scheme. I don't know. I'm going to find a couple images here for Stansbury. Not my favorite. Not my favorite color scheme, if we're being honest, Stansbury. But Matiaki Heilu getting a shout-out from the Utah football head coach is someone that has kind of forced his way into the conversation, which is exactly what we're looking for. Somebody to emerge, somebody to step up, somebody to make themselves a factor in Kevin McGivern's offense. We'll do one last break here. But before we do so, I want to remind everyone out there, our friends at Advanced Window Products are the number one replacement window company in Utah. I've told you this many, many times. I mean, hundreds of times now. I've told you it's worth making the phone call to 801-850-9100. If you have yet to even schedule a consultation, have somebody come out, measure your windows, tell you what the cost would be, you're really not doing yourself the service here. You're not committing to anything by making that phone call, but you're going to want to get someone out there. They'll tell you the best way to address the window problems that you have. They'll look at the materials on your current windows. They'll tell you how much more energy efficient they could make your home. They can tell you how much better they can make the home look. You can brainstorm on color schemes and things like that. Same thing with the interior when it comes to window coverings. 801-850-9100. Cash in now on a special offer, $2,500 off, 10 windows or more, and experience the lifetime warranty. Meaning a year from now you have a problem, they're going to take care of it, no questions asked. 10 years from now you have a problem, they're going to take care of it. 25 years from now you're thinking about selling the home and downsizing because now your kids have moved out and you're just going to get a little condo in St. George or something. Guess what? That window is still under warranty, and if there's a problem, they will fix it. AdvancedWindowProducts.com. Excuse me, AdvancedWindows.com. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. Do a little crosstalk with Spence next. Wrap up the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Final segment of the show, Crosstalk, brought to you by our friends over at Advanced Window Products. 801-850-9100 for $2,500 off 10 windows or more. Stop thinking about it and make the call. You're not committing to anything when they show up and measure your windows and give you a price quote. Financing options are available. And as always, a lifetime warranty on the number one replacement windows in the business. I got to say this. I was among the most staunch and avid of the haters, for lack of a better term, when it comes to Shedeur Sanders. All right. Our interactions with him at Big 12 Media Days and Pac-12 Media Days before that were just annoying, just obnoxious. I'm not necessarily, I don't understand the whole vibe and the showing off the watches thing and the driving the fancy car and getting the parking tickets every day on campus kind of a deal that, but the guy has conducted himself like a professional in the NFL with a lot of scrutiny, with a lot of criticism. And the Cleveland Browns are making a decision sooner than later on who their starting quarterback is going to be. Instead of fretting about it or wringing his hands, he is answering those questions the right way and talking about the fact that he's just got to go out there and work every day and let everything else handle itself. It's not the answer you would have expected to hear from a kid who, acted like he was God's gift to everything for a while, but the guy deserves credit for adjusting the way that he approaches really everything, and just trying to make himself into a every down starting NFL quarterback. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Shedeur Sanders is starting to – I'll never be a fan necessarily. I think that's probably too much of a stretch, but Shedeur Sanders is – at least checking the right boxes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely think he's starting to turn some heads a little bit. And, with a new head coach and Todd Monken, Stefanski leaving for the Falcons, which I totally forgot happened until the Broncos played them on Friday. I think having a QB competition is the right move here, especially when you've had Shedeur, who started, most of the games last year other than Dylan Gabriel. So he's starting to turn some heads a little bit. And I think that there is a chance that he may get some playing time this year again.
Have you noticed all of the weird social media posts and the NFL films shots and the just media presence of the quarterback wags this camp?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
There's a bunch of these viral photos of Justin Herbert and his, I guess now fiance Madison Beer.
Yep.
You have to question everything these days. We found out that those were not staged, but that the NFL is granting field access to these influencers and these young women because they're trying to capture the Gen Z female audience. Yeah. And they're not going to do that with Justin Herbert, but they'll do that with Justin Herbert's fiance.
Yeah, I mean, they did it with Christian McCaffrey's family too because they're doing joint practices right now.
They're allowing the female celebrity girlfriends onto the field and getting the pictures and encouraging those to go viral. And the NFL, they're so calculated. They want the TMZ element coming in, not in a negative, but just like the sort of celebrity worship type fan also to jump on board with the NFL because those people have money too. And that's what the NFL wants. The Drive with Spence Checketts is up next, and here he is in our Broadway studio. Hi.
Hello. At the gym today, just
humble brag.
No, dude, just
shout out you,
just
gym.
like ripping delts, just like flies.
Okay.
Yeah,
got the 15s in each hand.
17.5.
Okay.
Just ripping delts. Like some people. Who's the actor that played Bane?
Tom Hardy.
Yeah, I don't want to go that far, but I'm getting looks, and then suddenly I'm like, dude, stop showing off. Calm down.
It's interesting that you chose Tom Hardy.
Doesn't he have large delts?
Yeah, no, I think he's probably got great delts and everything else. He's also like 5'9", so I don't know why he chose Tom Hardy.
I'm taller than 5'9".
And there you go.
Now, the reason you're talking about influencers, they're everywhere in the gym. Like, just they take 2 benches to set up their camera and then film themselves like bench pressing.
That is a mental illness.
It's so annoying, dude.
That you know what? That's insulting to people with mental illnesses. I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, no, good point. Like, the gym's crowded at noon. You know, it's just people on their lunch break trying to get some exercise. And these college kids are dominating spaces to record their gym content. And it is so beyond obnoxious the way that it has permeated through society. I was at Harmon's the other day.
Okay.
The story about influencers on the sideline kind of sparked something to me. And this, I almost felt bad for her. I almost went up to her and said, you don't have to do this. I saw her get out of her car, and then she set up a tripod with a camera right outside of her car. She gets out of her car. She gets her baby from the baby seat, gets the cart, puts the baby in the cart, then leaves the baby by the side of the car and goes and sets up the tripod at the entrance of the store. Then she goes back and gets the cart and wheels the baby into the entrance, stops, goes and sets up the tripod by the elevator, wheels the baby into the elevator, stops, gets the tripod, and I watched her, Sean, do this down aisle after aisle after aisle for maybe 30 minutes.
Why, though?
I'm sure she has some sort of...
She's a momfluencer of some kind?
Yeah, some sort of stupid Instagram account where people want to watch her grocery shop with her child. I'm feeling horrible for the baby and honestly feeling bad for her. Like, that has to be such an exhausting way to live your life when everything you do is content for whatever the hell the thing is these days.
Yeah, I can't relate. That is my number one, like, I'm definitely older than you type of people kind of thing.
And we are the old guys now because what you're referencing about the NFL, the NBA has been doing this now for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. Like, one of my favorite NBA days used to be NBA All-Star Media Day because you have all the best players in the league. You have the 2 coaches that have earned the right to coach. And you used to have, you know, Howard Beck and Chris Mannix, like, asking questions. And last year, I don't know who it was. He's a really famous YouTuber. He's played in the NBA All-Star. He's utterly obnoxious. Devin Booker was asked about his aura farming 6 times during All-Star media availability. At the time, I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
I had to look it up. No basketball questions. They asked Devin Booker about aura farming 6 times.
Cool.
No, it's not cool.
It's great.
It's not great.
It's not great.
You have to be on my side on this.
I actually am. I guess every generation of sports fan and every generation of just like aging dude has had this thing where you're just like, I can't get on board with that.
I'm going to look this guy up.
And that's the gym. The gym fluencing is definitely where it's at with me. I have one of my dearest friends in the world is gym fluencing right now. He never has previously. We're 42.
Is that what they call it?
I don't know.
Ugh, I hate that.
We're 42 years old now. He has now started to film his workouts and flex. And I berate him mercilessly. I'm a bad friend.
No, you're a good friend.
Because I'm like, you know what? You look like a moron right now. And he just laughs because he knows I'm an unserious person. But I'm like, stop doing this. Don't do this anymore.
No, Sean, you're not just a good friend. You're the friend that everybody needs. Everybody needs. We talked about this yesterday. Drewski is this idiot's name. His name is Drewski. So obnoxious. But Pat McAfee has no one left in his life that can be like,
don't release a country album.
Congratulations on the expression. Congratulations. And look, delusional confidence is fascinating to me. I've always found it very fascinating for somebody that is so bad at something to believe that the world wants to see it, that they're brave enough to do what he did. But I'm telling you, if Pat McAfee was my friend, I would have grabbed him by the shirt collar and said, okay, do you need to do this? Okay, great. Go ahead and do it. and then just keep it to yourself. And then you listen, we'll listen, the family will listen. Don't put this out there. Like, there's nothing courageous about putting out trash. Like, it was. So yesterday I asked, I said, Porter, have you listened to this? And he actually did. He said he listened to the entire thing. And I had not. I heard some clips. And then at the end of the show, I searched Pat McAfee lyrics, and a song named Dookie popped up. So I reviewed some lyrics. Don't do it. It is a waste of your time. And so last night when I got home, I was cooking some dinner. I'm like, you know what? I'm throwing it on. And dude, you cannot describe how awful the entire thing is.
It's too bad.
You need a friend like Sean that will say, stop filming your workouts, dude. Because here's the thing. If he's your friend, you're embarrassing all of us. I had a friend show up to dinner once with a fedora and a scarf, and I'm like, you can't sit here. You can't sit at our table. I'm not letting you sit with us. He's the sweetest guy.
Only good guys wear the fedoras.
Well, he was going through a breakup, and you know the deal. You go through the breakup, you go through the divorce. You're like, should I wear new hats? Should I try something? Am I a cardigan sweater guy now? Like, you're just trying stuff. And he was trying stuff. But try stuff away from the friend group, because then people walk in, it's like fedora and scarf. All those guys suck if one of them was wearing a fedora and a scarf.
What makes me feel bad about, especially like in our age demographic, right? Mm-hmm. If you look good right now with your shirt off, mm-hmm. you should be proud of that.
Yeah.
You got to be able to be proud of it without calling attention to it yourself by putting it on the internet.
Correct. And you have to be really careful when, like, you might think that you're ready to take the shirt off, but you need like another 3 or 4 months. Like, keep going. We all got your back, but like, you don't fit into a medium yet. So let's take that sweater back. It's not. It is clinging to your body right now.
Medium is a child size. So
come on, man. Can't escape this. So you got to be careful.
Yeah.
You're making some progress. We're all proud of you. I'll tell you what, man. I got a guy in my neighborhood, and he runs almost daily, and I think it's a great thing that he's doing. But he should not have his shirt. Sounds horrible. He just shouldn't have his shirt off. And I respect that he thinks he should, but it's like, it's admirable, honestly.
Okay.
I'll be driving to work or whatever, and I'll see him. I'm like, my man, keep exercising.
Keep it up, love handles.
But mix in a tank or something, bro. Like, the delusional confidence to release an album, to run around campus with your shirt off when you're 37% body fat. Like, I appreciate it, but we all need a friend that can be like, don't do that. Don't wear the fedora. Don't release the album.
Okay. Morgan Scally joined us on the show today.
Yeah, awesome. Heard it. Good job.
Always great to hear from Morgan. Appreciate him giving us some time during fall camp.
We'll bring that back on my show.
You'll hear it on The Drive. You can also find it at ESPN700sports.com or on the ESPN 700 app. Stay tuned for The Drive. We'll do another Sean O'Connell show tomorrow.
25-pound dumbbells with flies, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, man.
25?
Yeah.
Heck yeah, dude.
No big deal.
Well done.
Thank you. Yikes. See you tomorrow.
ESPN 700, 920 FM.